I responded with gratitude. Small kindnesses mattered. People who'd witnessed what happened and silently supported me mattered. It all mattered. That evening, there was a celebration at a restaurant we'd rented out. The entire Momentum team, plus partners and families, over 200 people. During dinner, I stood to make a toast. 3 years ago, 23 of us walked out of a boardroom together. We didn't know what would happen next. We just knew we couldn't stay. Today, we're almost 200 people strong. We've helped transform dozens of companies. We've created jobs and opportunities. We've built something we're proud of. And we did it together with integrity, with hard work, with mutual respect. This success belongs to all of us. So here's to the journey. Here's to the people who believed. And here's to proving that doing the right thing isn't just morally correct, it's also good business. The room erupted in applause and cheers. Later, as the party wound down, Daniel pulled me aside. "There's someone here to see you. He's waiting outside. Said he understood if you didn't want to talk to him, but he hoped you would." My stomach dropped. I knew who it was. Richard. I found him standing on the sidewalk outside the restaurant. He looked even older than he had at the conference. He was no longer the powerful CEO in the expensive suit, just an old man in casual clothes, looking uncertain. "Hello, Alina." "Richard." "What are you doing here?" "I saw the news about your IPO. Congratulations, really, it's an incredible achievement." "Thank you." We stood in awkward silence. "I know I have no right to be here," he continued. "I know I forfeited any relationship with you and Daniel a long time ago, but I wanted to see you, to tell you in person that I'm proud of what you've built. And I'm sorry for what I did, truly sorry, not because you succeeded in spite of me, but because what I did was wrong, cruel, unforgivable." I studied his face. He looked sincere, broken even. "Why now? Why come here today?" "Because I'm dying." The words hung in the air between us. "What?" "Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. I have maybe 6 months, probably less. And I've been doing a lot of thinking about my life, about my legacy, about all the people I hurt in my quest for power and control. You were right that day at the conference. I destroyed myself. I have money, but I don't have anything that matters. No real relationships. No one who will miss me when I'm gone. Daniel won't even take my calls, and I don't blame him. I just wanted you to know that if I could go back and change that day in the boardroom, I would. If I could treat you with the respect you deserved from the beginning, I would. But I can't. All I can do is apologize and hope that someday, maybe Daniel will let me say goodbye. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I'm just asking you to tell him I'm sorry, that I love him. That my biggest regret isn't losing my company or my reputation, it's losing my son." Tears were running down his face. This man who'd once seemed so powerful, so untouchable, was standing in front of me completely broken. I felt a complicated mix of emotions, anger at what he'd done, pity for what he'd become, sadness for the time he'd wasted, but also, unexpectedly, compassion. "I'll tell him," I said quietly. "I can't promise he'll want to see you. You hurt him badly. But I'll tell him, and Richard, I do forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because I don't want to carry that anger anymore. What you did changed my life, yes, but I've built something good from it, so I'm choosing to let go of the resentment, for my sake, not yours." Richard nodded, wiping his eyes. "Thank you, that's more grace than I deserve." "Probably, but we all deserve a chance at redemption. Whether you can repair things with Daniel, that's up to him, but you should try. Life's too short to leave important things unsaid." "I will. Thank you, Alina, for everything, for being the daughter-in-law I didn't deserve and the leader I could never be." He turned and walked away. I watched him go, this man who'd once loomed so large in my life, who tried to destroy me and ended up teaching me my own strength. I went back inside and found Daniel, pulled him aside and told him about the conversation, about Richard's diagnosis, about his regrets. Daniel's face went through a range of emotions. Shock, anger, sadness, pain. "I don't know if I can forgive him," he said finally. "I don't know if I want to." "You don't have to," I said, "but you might want to talk to him, hear what he has to say, not for his sake but for yours, so you don't have regrets later." Daniel was quiet for a long time. Then he nodded. "I'll think about it." 2 weeks later, Daniel went to see his father. They talked for hours. I don't know everything they said. Daniel kept most of it private. But when he came home, he looked lighter, more at peace. "We're not magically fixed," he told me. "I'm not suddenly okay with everything he did, but we talked. Really talked, maybe for the first time in my life." He apologized. Not just for what he did to you, but for a lifetime of being emotionally unavailable and controlling. And I got to tell him how much he hurt me, how his need for control pushed me away. How I've spent my whole life trying to be anything but him. It was hard, but it was good, necessary. "I'm glad," I said, holding him. However long he has left, I'm going to try to have some kind of relationship with him. I'm doing it for me, not him, so I can look back without regrets. Richard Sterling died 4 months later. Daniel was with him at the end. So was I, surprisingly. Richard had asked to see me one last time. We sat by his hospital bed, this man who'd once been so powerful, now diminished by disease. "Thank you for coming," he whispered. "And thank you for giving me back my son, even if only for a little while. You're a remarkable woman, Alina. I should have seen that from the beginning." "Rest now," I said gently. "You've made your peace." He smiled slightly and closed his eyes. He died peacefully an hour later. The funeral was small. Richard had pushed away most people in his life. There were a few distant relatives, some old business associates who came out of obligation, and Daniel and me. I stood beside my husband as they lowered his father into the ground, and I thought about how strange life is. How the man who'd tried to destroy me had, in his final months, found a kind of redemption. Not complete, not perfect, but real. Daniel squeezed my hand. I knew he was feeling complicated things. Relief that his father's suffering was over. Sadness for the relationship they never really had. Gratitude that they'd at least had those final conversations. Grief for all the wasted time. After the service, we went back to our brownstone, sat in the living room in silence for a while. Then Daniel said something that surprised me. I inherited everything. His entire estate. He changed his will in those last months, left it all to me with a letter saying he hoped I'd use it better than he did. It's about $300 million after taxes and settling debts. I stared at him. $300 million, an unfathomable amount of money. "What are you going to do with it?" I asked. Daniel was quiet for a moment, thinking. "I want to set up a foundation for people who have been wrongfully terminated or pushed out of their jobs. Legal support, career counseling, seed funding for those who want to start their own businesses. Turn his money into something that helps people instead of hurting them. What do you think?" I smiled, tears in my eyes. "I think it's perfect. I think it's exactly what should happen to that money." And so the Sterling Second Chance Foundation was born. We hired a team to run it. Within the first year, they'd helped over 200 people fight wrongful termination cases, start new businesses, and rebuild their careers. People like me. People who'd been knocked down by powerful people and needed help getting back up. It became Richard's real legacy. Not the company that bore his name, though that continued under new leadership. Not the wealth he'd accumulated, but the lives changed by transforming his resources into opportunity for others. 5 years after my firing, I was invited to give a TED Talk. The topic was turning betrayal into breakthrough. I stood on that red circle, looking out at thousands of people in the audience and millions more who would eventually watch online, and I told my story. Not with bitterness or anger, but with honesty and hope. "The worst day of my professional life happened in a luxury boardroom on the 47th floor of a Manhattan skyscraper," I began. "My father-in-law, a billionaire CEO, fired me in front of 24 people without cause, without warning, without dignity. In that moment, I felt like my world was ending. I felt humiliated, betrayed, destroyed. But that moment, as terrible as it was, became the catalyst for the best decision I ever made. Because when I walked out of that boardroom, I didn't walk out alone. 22 of my colleagues walked out with me, and together, we built something extraordinary. I walked them through the journey, the fear and uncertainty, the decision to fight back, the struggle to gain traction, the war with Richard Sterling, the ultimate success of Momentum Innovations. But more importantly, I talked about what I'd learned. "Here's what I want you to understand," I said, my voice strong and clear. "Betrayal hurts. Setbacks are real. Powerful people can and will try to destroy you if they see you as a threat. But they can only succeed if you let them. You have more power than you think. The power to choose your response. The power to gather your allies. The power to build something new. The power to define your own worth instead of letting others define it for you. When Richard Sterling fired me, he was trying to send a message. That I was nothing without his company. That I was just his son's wife. That I didn't belong in his world. But I sent a different message. I showed him and everyone watching that my value wasn't determined by his opinion, that I could build my own empire. That integrity and success aren't mutually exclusive. And most importantly, that standing up for yourself, even when it's terrifying, even when the odds are against you, is always the right choice. I paused and looked around the audience. Some of you are in situations right now where you feel powerless, where someone is undermining you, belittling you, blocking your success. Maybe it's a boss. Maybe it's a colleague. Maybe it's a family member. and you're scared to speak up because of what you might lose. Your job, your income, your security, your relationships. I understand that fear. I lived that fear. But I also want you to understand something else. What you lose by staying in a situation where you're not valued is actually much greater than what you risk by leaving. You lose your self-respect, your mental health, your potential, your future. And those things are worth fighting for. Now, I'm not saying everyone should quit their job and start a company. That's not realistic or necessary. But I am saying you should never accept being treated as less than you are. You should never let someone else's insecurity or need for control diminish your light. You should surround yourself with people who see your value and amplify it, not people who feel threatened by it and try to diminish it. I smiled, thinking of my team. The 22 people who walked out with me that day, they changed my life. Not because they were exceptional talents, though they were, but because they were people of integrity who stood up for what was right even when it cost them something. Those are the people you want in your life, in your business, in your corner. And here's the beautiful thing. When you stand up for yourself, when you refuse to be diminished, you give other people permission to do the same. You create a ripple effect. That young woman who quit her toxic job after hearing my story went on to build a successful practice. She's helped dozens of other people find the courage to leave bad situations. Those people have influenced others, and on and on. One act of courage multiplies. One person standing up creates permission for others to stand up. So your story isn't just about you, it's about everyone watching, everyone who needs to see that it's possible, that you can fight back, that you can win. I took a breath, feeling emotional. I want to talk about forgiveness too, because I think that's important. Richard Sterling hurt me, deeply, deliberately. For a long time, I wanted revenge. I wanted him to suffer the way he made me suffer. And I won't lie, there was satisfaction in watching his empire crumble, in being the instrument of his downfall. But that satisfaction was temporary. The real peace came when I forgave him, not because he deserved it, not because what he did was okay, but because carrying that anger was exhausting. It was taking energy I needed for building my company, for loving my husband, for being the leader my team needed. Forgiveness isn't about the other person. It's about you. It's about choosing freedom over resentment, peace over revenge. And that's hard. It's one of the hardest things I've ever done. But it was worth it. When Richard died, I could be present for that moment without bitterness. I could support Daniel through his grief without my own anger getting in the way. I could look back on the whole experience with gratitude instead of rage. Gratitude for what I learned, for who I became, for what I built. The audience was completely silent. I could see people wiping their eyes, nodding, connecting with the message. So here's my challenge to you. If you're in a situation where you're being diminished, make a plan to change it. That might mean having a difficult conversation. It might mean setting boundaries. It might mean looking for a new job. I still remember the exact look on his face when I said those 3 words. I want out. My husband, Marcus Sterling, stood in the doorway of our penthouse bedroom wearing a custom Italian suit that cost more than most people's monthly salary. His dark eyes, the same ones that once made my heart flutter, were cold as ice. And then he did something I'll never forget. He smirked. Not a smile, not a laugh, a smirk. The kind that says you're beneath me, you're nothing, you don't even know what you've just done. You'll regret this, he said, his voice calm, almost amused, like he was telling me the weather forecast. He was right. I would regret it, just not in the way he thought. My name is Alina Monroe. Or at least that's who I was before I became Mrs. Sterling. Before I walked into a life that looked like a fairy tale from the outside but felt like a prison on the inside. This is the story of how I lost everything, how I was betrayed by the man I loved, humiliated by the people I trusted, and how I discovered that sometimes the only way to find yourself is to burn down everything you thought you wanted. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where it all started, because you need to understand how deep this goes. Before we continue, I need you to do something for me. Smash that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Because what I'm about to share with you, this journey I went through, it's going to take us to some dark places. But I promise you, by the end, you'll understand why some betrayals don't break you. They remake you. 3 years before that moment in the bedroom, I was nobody special. I mean that in the most honest way possible. I was 26 years old, working as an event coordinator for a small company in Boston. I planned corporate parties, charity galas, wedding receptions. The kind of job where you work 70 hours a week, smile until your face hurts, and still barely make enough to cover rent and student loans. I lived in a tiny studio apartment in a neighborhood that real estate agents called up and coming, which really meant it wasn't safe to walk alone after dark. My furniture came from thrift stores and sidewalk finds. My work wardrobe was 5 pieces mixed and matched in different combinations. I ate ramen more nights than I'd like to admit, but I was happy. Or at least I thought I was. I had dreams, you know? I wanted to start my own event planning business someday. I wanted to create beautiful moments for people. I believed in love, in happy endings, in the idea that hard work and a good heart would eventually pay off. God, I was naive. I met Marcus at one of the events I coordinated. A charity auction for childhood cancer research at the Fairmont Hotel. It was one of the biggest events our company had ever handled, and I was terrified of messing it up. I had been there since 5 in the morning, making sure every detail was perfect. The flowers, the lighting, the silent auction displays, the catering, the sound system. Everything. Marcus arrived late, which I would later learn was his signature move. Important people arrive late. It shows everyone else their time is more valuable. He walked in wearing a tuxedo that fit him like it was painted on, and I swear the energy in the room shifted. People gravitated toward him. Men wanted to shake his hand. Women wanted to catch his eye. He was 32, tall, dark-haired, with a jawline that could cut glass and a smile that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. He was the CEO of Sterling Global Investments, a company his father had built and he had expanded into an empire. Magazines called him one of Boston's most eligible bachelors. Forbes estimated his net worth at somewhere north of $200 million, and somehow, impossibly, he noticed me. I was running past the bar, headset on, clipboard in hand, trying to solve a crisis with the dessert service when I literally ran into him. And I mean literally. I crashed right into his chest, spilled champagne on his tuxedo, and dropped my clipboard. Business cards and schedule printouts scattered everywhere. I wanted to die, just sink into the floor and disappear. I am so sorry, I stammered, grabbing napkins, trying to dab at his jacket, my face burning with embarrassment. I wasn't looking where I was going. I'm so sorry. Please send me the dry cleaning bill. I'll pay for it. I'm so sorry. He caught my wrist gently, and when I looked up, he was smiling. Not the polite smile you give someone when you're actually annoyed. A real smile. It's okay, he said. His voice was deep, smooth, confident. Honestly, this party was boring until now. I needed some excitement. I thought he was making fun of me, but then he bent down and started helping me pick up my papers. Marcus Sterling, billionaire in a custom tuxedo, on his knees picking up my scattered schedule printouts. You're running this whole event, he asked, looking at the detailed timeline on one of the sheets. Coordinating it, I corrected, still mortified. I work for the planning company. It's impressive, he said, handing me the stack of papers. Every detail is perfect. I've been to 100 of these charity things and they're usually disasters. This one actually feels thoughtful. I didn't know what to say. Important people didn't usually compliment the staff. We were supposed to be invisible. Thank you, I managed. I'm Marcus. He extended his hand. I know who you are, Mr. Sterling. I'm Alina. Alina. He said my name like he was tasting it. Can I ask you something, Alina? Of course. When this event is over, when you've made sure every last guest has gone home happy, would you let me take you to dinner? I actually laughed. I thought he was joking. Men like Marcus Sterling didn't ask out women like me. We existed in completely different universes. But he wasn't joking. His expression was completely serious, almost vulnerable. Are you making fun of me? I asked. No, he said simply. I'm asking you to dinner. Please say yes. And God help me, I did. That dinner turned into a second date, then a third. Within a month, we were seeing each other every weekend. Within 3 months, he told me he was falling in love with me. Within 6 months, he proposed. Everyone told me it was a fairy tale. My friends squealed with excitement. My mother cried happy tears. Strangers on the internet called me the luckiest woman alive when our engagement photos appeared in the society pages. But here's what nobody tells you about fairy tales. They're just stories. And in real life, the prince isn't always who he pretends to be. The first time I saw the real Marcus was 2 weeks before our wedding. We were at his parents' estate in Martha's Vineyard, having dinner with his family. His mother, Catherine Sterling, was exactly what you'd imagine. Old money. Perfect posture, the kind of woman who made you feel like you were failing just by existing in her presence. She had never approved of me. She made that clear from day one. I wasn't from their world. My parents were middle class. My father was a high school teacher. My mother was a nurse. I didn't go to an Ivy League school. I didn't have connections or a trust fund or a pedigree. But Marcus had always defended me, or so I thought. That night at dinner, Catherine made a comment about our wedding planning. Something about how the flowers I'd chosen were quaint, but perhaps we should consider something more sophisticated for a sterling family wedding. I tried to laugh it off, but she kept pushing. The venue wasn't prestigious enough. The guest list wasn't exclusive enough. My bridesmaids weren't from the right families. I waited for Marcus to say something, to defend me, to tell his mother that this was our wedding and we'd plan it however we wanted. Instead, he cleared his throat and said, "Mother has a point, Alina. Maybe we should reconsider some of the choices. This wedding represents the sterling name." I felt like I'd been slapped. I didn't say anything for the rest of dinner. I smiled, nodded, played the role of the agreeable future daughter-in-law. But inside, something shifted. Later that night, in the guest room, I confronted him. "Why didn't you defend me?" I asked. He looked genuinely confused. "What do you mean? Your mother insulted every choice I've made for our wedding. She basically said I'm not good enough for your family, and you agreed with her." Marcus sighed like I was being dramatic. "Alina, she's just trying to help. She's been planning society events for 30 years. She knows what she's doing." "So I didn't say that. You didn't have to." He crossed the room and put his hands on my shoulders. "Baby, listen to me. I love you, I'm marrying you. But you have to understand there are expectations that come with being part of this family. It's not personal. It's just the way things are." I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell him that if he really loved me, he wouldn't care about his mother's expectations. But I was 26, in love, and terrified of losing the fairy tale, so I let it go. I wish I could go back and shake that version of myself. I wish I could tell her to run, to get out, to understand that someone who truly loves you doesn't ask you to shrink yourself to fit into their world. But I didn't know that yet. I still believed love conquered all. The wedding was beautiful. I have to admit that. Catherine took over most of the planning, and while it wasn't the intimate celebration I'd dreamed of, it was spectacular. 400 guests, a venue that looked like a palace, flowers that cost more than my childhood home, a dress that weighed 30 pounds and had to be preserved in a climate-controlled case afterward. In the photos, I'm smiling. Marcus is smiling. We look perfect, like we stepped out of a magazine spread titled The Wedding of the Year. What the photos don't show is that I barely saw my husband at our own reception. He spent most of the night networking with his father's business associates. What they don't show is that my own friends felt so uncomfortable among his wealthy guests that most of them left early. What they don't show is that, when we finally got to our honeymoon suite, Marcus took a phone call that lasted 45 minutes while I sat alone in an expensive piece of lingerie I'd bought special for the occasion. "Sorry, baby," he said when he finally hung up. "That was a deal in Singapore. It couldn't wait." Even on our wedding night, I came second. Our honeymoon was in the Maldives. 2 weeks in an overwater villa that cost more per night than I used to make in a month. It should have been paradise, and parts of it were beautiful, but Marcus worked through most of it. Conference calls at odd hours, emails at dinner, his laptop open on the beach. "This is temporary," he promised. "Just until this merger goes through, then I'll take time off. We'll do this properly." That was the first lie. There would be many more. When we returned from our honeymoon, I moved into Marcus's penthouse. Our penthouse, I had to remind myself, except it never felt like ours. It felt like his space that I was borrowing. The place was massive, 4,000 square feet overlooking Boston Harbor, floor-to-ceiling windows, marble floors, designer furniture that cost more than cars. It had been decorated by some famous interior designer whose name I was supposed to know, and everything was in shades of white, gray, and black. Cold, modern, sterile. "We can redecorate if you want," Marcus said that first day, though his tone suggested he didn't really mean it. I looked around at the perfectly styled space and knew that anything I added would stick out like a stain. So I said it was beautiful, which it was, just not warm, not homey, not mine. I quit my job, which Marcus encouraged. Actually, encouraged is the wrong word. He insisted on it. "You don't need to work anymore," he said, like it was obvious. "Sterling wives don't work. Besides, you have new responsibilities now. Charity boards, society events, supporting my career." I should have fought harder. I should have insisted on keeping my independence, my own money, my own identity. But everyone around me acted like I'd won the lottery. My mother actually cried with relief that I wouldn't have to struggle anymore. My old boss threw me a going-away party and told me I was living the dream. So I let go of the one thing that had been mine. The first few months, I tried to embrace my new life. I joined the junior league. I volunteered for the Children's Hospital Charity Committee. I took tennis lessons at the country club and attended luncheons where women who'd never worked a day in their lives complained about how hard it was to find good household staff. I smiled. I wore the right clothes. I learned which fork to use at formal dinners. I memorized the names of important people and their wives. I became exactly what Catherine Sterling wanted me to be, a pretty, polite accessory to her son's success. But inside, I was disappearing. Marcus worked constantly. He left before I woke up and came home after I'd gone to bed. When we did see each other, he was distracted, always on his phone, always thinking about the next deal. We stopped having real conversations. We stopped laughing together. We stopped touching except for the occasional obligatory kiss hello or goodbye. Our first anniversary, he forgot. Actually forgot. I'd planned a special dinner at home, wore a dress he'd once said he loved, had the chef prepare his favorite meal. I waited for 3 hours. He finally came home at 11, surprised to find me still awake. "Was there something tonight?" he asked, loosening his tie. I just stared at him. "Our anniversary." He had the decency to look guilty for about 5 seconds. Then he said, "Baby, I'm sorry. This Tokyo deal has me completely buried. We'll celebrate this weekend, I promise, somewhere nice, anywhere you want." We didn't celebrate that weekend, or the next. Eventually, I stopped bringing it up. I started spending more time alone, long walks through the city, hours in bookstores and cafes. I'd sit in places where nobody knew my name or my husband's name, where I could just be anonymous. Those were the only times I felt like I could breathe. One afternoon, about 18 months into our marriage, I ran into an old friend from college, Sarah. We'd been roommates, stayed up late talking about our dreams, supported each other through breakups and bad grades and quarter-life crises. But we'd lost touch after I married Marcus. Honestly, I'd lost touch with everyone from my old life. We got coffee, and for 2 hours I felt like myself again. We laughed. We gossiped. We talked about real things, not the surface-level nonsense I discussed at society luncheons. When I told her about my life, I tried to make it sound good. The penthouse, the vacations, the charity work, but Sarah knew me too well. "Are you happy?" she asked simply. The question broke something in me. My eyes filled with tears before I could stop them. "I don't know," I whispered. "I have everything I'm supposed to want, but I feel so empty, Sarah, so invisible, like I'm not even a real person anymore, just Mrs. Sterling, just the wife." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Then why stay?" "Because I love him," I said automatically. Then I paused. "Or maybe I love who he was when we first met, I don't know anymore." That conversation haunted me for weeks. Why did I stay? Was love enough when you felt this alone? When you'd given up everything and got nothing back except a last name and a bank account? I decided to try one more time. To really talk to Marcus, to tell him how I felt, to fight for our marriage. I planned it carefully. I made a reservation at the restaurant where we'd had our first date. I texted him 3 days in advance, confirmed that morning, reminded him that afternoon. I wore the same dress I'd worn that first night, styled my hair the same way. He showed up 40 minutes late with his business partner, Trevor. "Sorry, babe," Marcus said, kissing my cheek. "Trevor and I are working through some contract details. You don't mind if he joins us, right? It'll just be for appetizers." Trevor stayed for the entire meal. They talked business the whole time. Marcus never even asked why I'd wanted to have dinner, why I was dressed up, why I looked like I was about to cry into my wine glass. That night, lying next to my husband in our king-size bed, I felt more alone than I'd ever felt in my tiny studio apartment eating ramen by myself. But the loneliness I could have survived. The neglect I could have endured. What I couldn't survive was what came next. It started with small things I told myself I was imagining. Marcus staying even later at work. A new password on his phone. Unexplained charges on the credit card for jewelry I never received. A woman's laugh in the background when he called to say he'd be late. I told myself I was being paranoid, insecure, that successful men had demanding careers and I needed to be more understanding. Then came the night I decided to surprise him at his office. It was a Thursday, around 8 p.m. Marcus had said he'd be working late on a presentation. I thought I'd bring him dinner from his favorite steakhouse. Maybe we could eat together in his office, reconnect a little. I used my key card to access the executive floor. The receptionist had gone home. The hallways were quiet, most offices dark. But light spilled from Marcus's corner office at the end of the hall. I walked toward it, carrying the bag of food, practicing what I'd say. Something light and sweet. a peace offering. I heard her before I saw her. A woman's voice, soft and flirty. "You're terrible. What if someone comes in?" Then Marcus, laughing, actually laughing. The way he used to laugh with me but hadn't in over a year. "Everyone's gone home, relax." I should have left. I should have turned around and walked away. But something made me move forward, made me look through the glass wall of his office. Marcus was sitting on the edge of his desk. And standing between his legs, his hands on her waist, was a woman I recognized. Vanessa Chen. 28 years old, Harvard MBA, one of the rising stars at Sterling Global Investments. Beautiful, brilliant, ambitious, everything I wasn't anymore. As I watched, frozen in the hallway, he pulled her closer and kissed her. Not a quick kiss, not a mistake, a real kiss. Familiar, practiced. The kiss of two people who'd done this many times before. The bag of food slipped from my hands and hit the floor. They jumped apart. Marcus's head snapped toward the door and our eyes met through the glass. I saw shock, then annoyance. Then, worst of all, I saw the calculation. I could literally watch him deciding what to say, what excuse to make, how to handle me. I didn't give him the chance. I turned and ran. I heard him call after me. "Alina, Alina, wait, it's not what you think." That's what they all say, isn't it? The cheaters, the liars. The people who destroy your world and then insult your intelligence by pretending you didn't see what you clearly saw. I made it to the elevator, stabbed the button frantically. I could hear his footsteps, his voice calling my name. The elevator doors opened and I threw myself inside, hitting the close button over and over. The last thing I saw before the doors shut was Marcus standing in the hallway, not even trying to reach me anymore, just watching me go with an expression I couldn't read. I don't remember the ride down. I don't remember walking through the lobby or getting to the street. The next thing I knew, I was sitting on a bench in the park across from his building, shaking so hard my teeth chattered even though it was summer. My phone started ringing. Marcus. I declined the call. It rang again, and again, and again. Finally, I answered. "Alina, where are you? Come back, let me explain." "Explain what?" My voice sounded hollow, like it was coming from far away. "Explain how I misunderstood watching you kiss another woman. It was just a kiss. It didn't mean anything. I swear to God, nothing else happened." The ease with which he lied was almost impressive. "How long? Baby, please." "How long, Marcus?" Silence. Then 6 months. 6 months, half a year. While I'd been trying to be the perfect wife, attending his company events, sitting through boring dinners with his clients, supporting his career, dying inside from loneliness, he'd been with her. "I want a divorce," I said. "Alina, don't be dramatic. People make mistakes. We can work through this. I'll end it with her, I promise. Just come home." "I want a divorce," I repeated. "You're upset, I understand, but don't make any decisions tonight. Come home, sleep on it. We'll talk in the morning when you're calm." When I'm calm, like I was being hysterical. Like my reaction to finding my husband with another woman was an overreaction I'd regret after a good night's sleep. "I'm not coming home tonight," I said and hung up. I checked into a hotel. Not anywhere fancy, just a normal chain hotel where nobody knew me. I sat on the edge of the bed in the generic room and stared at the wall. Everything I'd given up. My job, my independence, my friends, my identity, all for a man who couldn't even be faithful for 2 years. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Marcus. Then Catherine Sterling. Then numbers I didn't recognize. I turned it off. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in the dark replaying every moment of the past 2 years, seeing them differently now. All those late nights at work. All those business trips. All those times he'd been distant or distracted or too tired to even talk to me. How much of it had been real? Had he ever actually loved me? Or had I just been a project, a challenge, the ordinary girl he could mold into the perfect society wife while he had his fun elsewhere? By morning, I'd made my decision. I was done. I wanted out. I wanted my life back, whatever was left of it. I went back to the penthouse around noon when I knew Marcus would be at work. I needed to pack some things, figure out my next move. I used my key and stepped into the cold, perfect space that had never been home. I was halfway to the bedroom when I heard his voice. "I hoped you'd come back." I spun around. Marcus was standing in the living room, still in his suit, looking like he hadn't slept either. "What are you doing here?" I asked. "I live here, so do you." "Not anymore." He walked toward me slowly, carefully, like I was a spooked animal. "Alina, please, can we just talk about this like adults?" "There's nothing to talk about. I want a divorce." And that's when everything changed. The concerned, apologetic expression slid off his face like a mask. What replaced it was cold, hard, the real Marcus Sterling. "No," he said simply, "that's not your choice." "Actually, it is. You want to leave me, fine, but you'll leave with nothing, and I mean nothing, Alina." My heart started pounding. "What are you talking about?" He smiled then. That same cruel smirk I mentioned at the beginning of this story. "The prenup you signed, did you actually read it? Or were you too excited about the wedding to pay attention?" The prenup. I'd signed it 3 days before the wedding. Marcus's lawyers had presented it, a thick stack of papers full of legal language. I'd felt uncomfortable, but Marcus had assured me it was just a formality, standard procedure for wealthy families. "My lawyer looked at it," I said, but my voice wavered. I'd hired a lawyer through a friend's recommendation, paid her $1,000 I couldn't really afford. She'd met with me for 30 minutes, skimmed the document, and said it seemed standard. "Then your lawyer should have explained what would happen if you initiated divorce proceedings within the first 5 years of marriage," Marcus said, circling me like a shark. "You get nothing. No alimony, no settlement, no portion of any assets acquired during the marriage. You leave exactly as you came. Actually worse than you came because you quit your job, remember? You have no income, no recent work history. Good luck explaining that gap on your resume." I felt sick. "You're bluffing." "Am I? Call your lawyer, ask her. Better yet, I'll have my legal team send over the relevant sections highlighted." He pulled out his phone. "Why are you doing this?" I whispered. "If you want Vanessa, just let me go." He laughed, actually laughed. "This isn't about Vanessa. This is about you understanding your place. I'm a Sterling. My reputation, my image, my family legacy, they matter. A divorce 2 years and makes me look bad, makes people talk, makes my mother say I told you so. I'm not giving anyone that satisfaction. So what? I'm supposed to just stay married to you while you screw your assistant. She's a senior analyst, not an assistant. And yes, essentially, you'll stay, you'll smile, you'll play the role of the loving wife. And in return, you'll continue to enjoy the lifestyle you've become accustomed to." I stared at this man I'd married, this stranger wearing my husband's face. "And if I refuse, if I file for divorce anyway," the smirk widened, "then I'll destroy you. I'll drag it out in court for years. I'll make sure every detail of your life gets examined, twisted, exposed. I'll paint you as a gold digger who trapped a wealthy man and now wants a payday. I'll make you look so bad that nobody in this city will want anything to do with you. And in the end, after you've spent everything you have on legal fees, you'll still get nothing. Because the prenup is ironclad, I made sure of that." My hands were shaking. "I could tell people about Vanessa, about what you really are. Go ahead, who's going to believe you? The nobody from nowhere versus the Sterling family? We own half the media in this city. We have more lawyers than you have friends. You think you can win that fight?" He stepped closer, his voice dropping to almost a whisper. "You need me, Alina. Without me, you're nothing. You have nothing. You are nothing." That's when I said it. Those 3 words that started this whole story. "I want out." And he gave me that look, that smirk, and delivered the line that would haunt him. "You'll regret this." He was right. I would regret it, just not in the way he thought. I stood there in that cold, beautiful penthouse, looking at the man I'd promised to love forever, and something inside me broke. But not in the way you might think. I didn't shatter into tears. I didn't crumble. Something harder formed in the broken places. Something sharp and focused and absolutely done with being small. "Okay," I said quietly. Marcus blinked, clearly surprised. He'd expected me to cry, to beg, to argue. "Okay? You're right, I don't have anything without you. I can't win a legal fight. I can't survive the PR battle. I'm nobody." I watched his shoulders relax, watched him think he'd won. "So I'll stay." The smirk returned, smug and satisfied. "Good, you're being smart. We can move past this, Alina. We can make this work, you'll see." I nodded, played the part of the defeated wife. And that night, lying in the guest bedroom because I couldn't stomach sharing a bed with him, I made a decision. If he wanted me to stay, I'd stay. But I wouldn't stay as the naive, trusting woman I'd been. I would stay as someone else entirely. Someone patient. Someone calculating. Someone who understood that the only way to beat a man like Marcus Sterling was to play his own game better than he did. I would regret my old life. I would regret the person I'd been. But I wouldn't regret what I was about to become. The next morning, I woke up with crystal clarity. I'd spent half the night researching, thinking, planning. Marcus thought he'd caged me. What he'd actually done was give me time, resources, and access to everything I needed to dismantle his entire world. But I had to be smart. I had to be patient. Men like Marcus had power because they underestimated people like me. They thought money and lawyers and fear were enough to keep us in line. They never considered that the quiet wife they ignored might be paying attention, might be learning, might be preparing. First, I needed information. Real information, not just the surface-level knowledge of his business that he'd shared when he was still pretending to care about my opinions. I started small. I began paying attention during the company events I attended as his wife. The cocktail parties, the charity galas, the business dinners where I was expected to look pretty and stay quiet. Before, I'd tuned out the shop talk, bored by discussions of mergers and acquisitions and market positions. Now, I listened to every word. I learned that Sterling Global Investments was in the middle of a major deal, a merger with a European firm that would either make Marcus the youngest CEO of a billion-dollar international investment company, or, if it fell through, seriously damage his reputation and the company's stock value. I learned that the deal was complicated, built on relationships and carefully maintained appearances. Marcus's image as a stable, successful, family-oriented young executive was part of what made investors confident. His picture-perfect marriage to his devoted wife was mentioned in multiple business profiles. Interesting. I also started noticing things about Vanessa. She was always at these events now, usually standing just a bit too close to Marcus, looking at him just a bit too long. Other people noticed too. I saw the glances, the whispers behind hands, the knowing looks. Marcus thought he was being discreet, but he wasn't. He was just powerful enough that people pretended not to see. One evening, at a cocktail reception, I watched Vanessa touch Marcus's arm while they talked, her hand lingering. I saw Marcus's business partner, Trevor, notice it too. He caught my eye across the room and I saw pity there. I smiled at him. Bright and fake. The smile of a woman who either didn't notice or didn't care that her husband was cheating on her in plain sight. But inside, I was filing it all away. Every interaction, every indiscretion, every witness. The next phase of my plan required me to do something I'd avoided since marrying Marcus. I needed to reconnect with my old life, my old skills, my old self. I called Sarah, my college friend. We met for coffee, and this time I didn't pretend everything was fine. I need help, I told her, and I need you to keep it completely confidential. Sarah leaned forward, concerned. What's going on? Are you okay? Is Marcus hurting you? Not physically, but yes, he's hurting me. He's cheating on me, and when I tried to leave, he told me the prenup means I'd walk away with nothing. He basically told me I'm trapped. Sarah's eyes flashed with anger. That bastard. Alina, there has to be something you can do. Legal options, maybe. I'm not looking for legal options. Not yet. I need something else. I took a breath. You work in digital marketing now, right? You understand social media, PR, how information spreads? She nodded slowly. Yes, why? Because I need to learn. I need to understand how to control a narrative, how to build a following, how to make people care about a story. Sarah studied my face. What are you planning? I'm planning to stop being powerless, but I need to be smart about it. I can't go up against Marcus and his lawyers and his money directly, so I need to go around them. I need leverage he doesn't see coming. A slow smile spread across Sarah's face. I'll help you, whatever you need. Over the next few weeks, Sarah became my secret weapon. She taught me about social media platforms, about how stories go viral, about the power of public opinion. She explained how one well-timed video could reach millions of people, how authentic emotion trumped expensive PR firms, how the internet loved nothing more than a story about the powerful being exposed. You have to understand, Sarah said during one of our secret meetings, people are tired of wealthy men getting away with everything. If you can show them the real Marcus, if you can make them care about your story, no amount of money can make that disappear. The internet never forgets. But I couldn't just post my story and hope for the best. Marcus would bury it, sue me, claim I was lying. I needed proof, evidence, something undeniable. That's when I started really searching. I began with Marcus's home office. He'd stopped being careful around me, stopped seeing me as a threat. Why would he? I was just his decorative wife, too weak and dependent to fight back. He had no idea I'd spent hours on YouTube learning how to recover deleted files from computers, that I'd taught myself the basics of digital forensics, that I'd ordered a tiny flash drive that looked like a pen and could copy entire hard drives in minutes. One night, while Marcus was in the shower, I went through his laptop. My hands shook as I navigated through folders, copying everything to the flash drive. Emails, documents, photos, messages. I found spreadsheets that detailed questionable transactions, emails discussing ways to hide assets from tax authorities, messages that suggested Marcus had used insider information for trades, which was very illegal. And I found the messages with Vanessa, hundreds of them. Going back not 6 months like he'd admitted, but over a year, starting 2 months after our wedding, the messages were explicit. Not just about sex, though there was plenty of that, but about me. About how boring I was, how naive, how easy I was to manage. Vanessa had written, "When are you going to get rid of her?" And Marcus had replied, "When it's convenient. Right now the marriage is useful. Investors like the stable family man image." I was useful. That's all I'd ever been to him. A prop in his carefully constructed life. I copied everything and hid the flash drive in a tampon box in my bathroom. Marcus would never look there, but I still needed more. Digital evidence could be challenged, claimed to be doctored, or taken out of context. I needed something clearer, something visual. That's when I thought of the apartment. I'd found the lease agreement in Marcus's files. A luxury apartment in the Seaport district, rented under an LLC that Marcus controlled. The address had appeared in several of his messages to Vanessa. I did some research. The building had excellent security, which meant cameras everywhere. And in Massachusetts, you can request security footage if you can prove you have legal interest in a property. As Marcus's wife, I had access to all his accounts, including the LLC. Technically, I was part owner of that apartment. It took me 3 weeks to get the building management to cooperate, and it cost me a substantial administrative fee in cash. But eventually, they provided me with footage from the past 6 months. Hours and hours of hallway cameras showing Marcus and Vanessa entering and leaving the apartment, together, kissing in the hallways, his hand on her back, her head on his shoulder, sometimes staying for an hour, sometimes overnight. The timestamps were damning. Nights he'd told me he was working late. A weekend he'd said he was at a conference in New York. Afternoons when he'd claimed to be in meetings. All lies, all documented. I had everything I needed now. Evidence of infidelity, evidence of financial crimes, evidence that Marcus Sterling was not the golden boy everyone believed him to be. But I still couldn't just release it. Not yet. Because Marcus was right about one thing: he did have power, money, lawyers, the ability to make my life hell. What I needed was timing. I needed to wait for the exact moment when exposing him would do maximum damage, when he'd be too busy to fight back effectively, when the world would be paying attention. I needed to wait for the merger. Marcus had been working on the European deal for over a year. It was scheduled to finalize in 3 months. The week before the signing, there would be a massive gala event, a celebration for investors and stakeholders. Press would be there. Important people from both companies. Everyone who mattered in Marcus's world. That's when I'd strike. When he was at his most confident, his most vulnerable, his most visible. I just had to survive 3 more months living with a man I despised, pretending to be the obedient wife he thought he'd broken. It was the hardest 3 months of my life. I had to smile at Marcus across the breakfast table, attend events on his arm, playing the devoted spouse. Listen to him take phone calls with Vanessa while I was in the next room. Not even bothering to hide it anymore because he thought I'd accepted my place. Some nights I'd lie awake, the rage and humiliation so intense I thought I'd burst. But then I'd think about what was coming, about the flash drive hidden in my bathroom, about the video files backed up in 3 separate cloud accounts, about the plan that was coming together piece by piece, and I'd smile in the dark. During those 3 months, I also started building my own platform, nothing connected to my real name or Marcus. But I created accounts, started learning how to edit video, how to craft a narrative, how to make something that would resonate with people. Sarah helped me practice. We'd film test videos, critique them, reshoot them. I learned about lighting and sound and how to speak to a camera in a way that felt authentic and compelling. "You're a natural," Sarah said after one session. "You speak from the heart. People are going to connect with this." I also did something else. Something that felt scary but necessary. I reached out to a divorce attorney. Not the cheap one I'd used before, but one of the best in Boston. Someone who specialized in high-net-worth divorces and had a reputation for fighting dirty when necessary. Her name was Patricia Valdez, and she scared me a little. She was in her 50s, impeccably dressed, with sharp eyes that seemed to see right through you. I told her everything. Showed her the prenup, the evidence I'd gathered, explained my plan. She listened without interrupting, her expression unreadable. When I finished, she sat back in her leather chair and studied me. "You understand this will get ugly," she said finally. "Marcus will fight back with everything he has. He'll try to destroy your reputation, claim you're mentally unstable, maybe even accuse you of extortion or blackmail. I know. You'll lose friends, people will choose sides, and most of them will choose his because he has the money and power. I know." And even with all this evidence, there's a chance you still walk away with very little financially. The prenup is solid. We can challenge it, argue duress or inadequate representation, but it's not guaranteed. I understand. Patricia leaned forward. Then why do this? Why not just quietly leave, start over somewhere else, rebuild your life without the fight? I met her eyes. Because I'm tired of men like Marcus getting away with everything. Because he needs to understand that people aren't disposable. Because maybe if I do this, the next woman he tries to trap will have a roadmap for fighting back. A small smile crossed Patricia's face. Okay then, let's burn his world down. We spent the next several weeks preparing. Patricia reviewed every piece of evidence, organized it, built a legal strategy. She filed preliminary paperwork that wouldn't be served until I gave the word. She prepared motions and briefs and arguments. She taught me about something I hadn't known existed. In cases involving fraud or hidden assets, sometimes prenups could be invalidated. And if Marcus had been hiding money from tax authorities, the government might be very interested in those records I'd found. We could involve the SEC, Patricia said. If he's been doing insider trading, they'll want to investigate. And federal prosecutors don't care how rich or connected someone is. They love making examples of wealthy executives. It was all coming together, the legal strategy, the public relations plan, the evidence, the timing. I just had to wait for the gala. The week before the event, Marcus was unbearable. Stressed, short-tempered, barely acknowledging my existence except to bark orders about what I should wear, who I should talk to, how I should behave. This night is critical, he said the day before. Everything needs to be perfect. The European partners need to see a united, successful company with strong leadership. That means you smile, you're charming, you make me look good. Can you handle that? I looked at my husband, at this man who'd never really known me at all, and smiled sweetly. Of course, I'll be perfect. Good. He actually patted my head like I was a dog. Wear the blue dress, the one my mother picked out, and the diamond necklace. Show them you're a sterling. That night, I laid out the blue dress. I polished the diamond necklace. I prepared the perfect hair and makeup. I would look exactly like what Marcus wanted, because the higher I let him rise, the farther he had to fall. The night of the gala, I got ready carefully. Hair in an elegant updo, makeup flawless, the blue designer dress that probably cost more than my parents' monthly mortgage, the diamond necklace that felt like a collar. I looked in the mirror and saw Mrs. Sterling, the perfect society wife, beautiful, polished, empty. But in my purse, carefully hidden, was a small tablet. On that tablet was a video I'd created, 12 minutes long. My face, my voice, my story, backed up with evidence, timestamps, receipts, security footage, messages, everything. At the gala, I played my part beautifully. I smiled at the European investors. I made small talk with their wives. I laughed at appropriate moments. I stood next to Marcus as he gave his speech about the merger, about the bright future of Sterling Global Investments, about integrity and partnership and trust. The irony almost made me laugh out loud. Vanessa was there too, of course, wearing a red dress that was just a bit too sexy for a business event. She kept catching Marcus's eye, giving him little smiles that she thought were secret. I saw Trevor notice. I saw several of the board members notice. I saw Marcus's mother, Catherine, notice, her mouth tightening into a thin line of disapproval. Perfect. The speeches ended. Dinner was served. Marcus was in his element, moving from table to table, shaking hands, making promises, building his empire. He'd forgotten I existed. That's when I made my move. I excused myself from the table, claiming I needed to freshen up. Instead, I went to the AV booth where the technical staff controlled the massive screens used for presentations. I'd prepared for this. I'd researched the hotel's system. I knew what equipment they used, and I'd brought everything I needed. The tech guy was young, maybe 22, bored with the fancy event he was working. "Excuse me," I said, turning on every bit of charm I had. "I'm Mrs. Sterling. My husband asked me to check on the presentation files. There might be an additional slideshow for later." The kid straightened up, trying to look professional. "Oh, sure, Mrs. Sterling, everything's running smoothly." "That's wonderful. He just wanted me to verify something quickly. Would you mind?" I gestured to the computer. I'm not really supposed to let anyone." I leaned in conspiratorially. "Between you and me, my husband is incredibly particular. If I don't check and he asks me about it later, I'll be the one who hears about it all night." I rolled my eyes good-naturedly. "You know how it is." He laughed, sympathetic. "Yeah, okay, go ahead, just real quick though. 30 seconds, I promise." It took me 20. I plugged in the tablet, uploaded the video file to his system, queued it up, and set it to play in exactly 10 minutes. Long enough for me to get back to my table. Long enough for Marcus to be in the middle of his big moment with the European partners. All set, I said brightly. Thank you so much. No problem, Mrs. Sterling. I walked back through the ballroom, my heart pounding so hard I thought people might hear it. This was it. No turning back now. In 10 minutes, everyone in this room would know the truth about Marcus Sterling. I slid back into my seat just as Marcus returned to the table with the CEO of the European firm. Elena, Marcus said his. December 20th, January 7th. The footage cycled through, date after date, damning and undeniable. Marcus lunged toward me. You bitch, you! But Henrik Anderson stood up, blocking his path. I suggest you let the presentation finish, Mr. Sterling. Security guards were moving through the room now, but they didn't know what to do. Shut down the screens, remove someone. Who was in charge? On the screens, the footage faded and text messages appeared. Marcus and Vanessa's messages, enlarged for everyone to read. Vanessa, when are you going to get rid of her? Marcus, when it's convenient. Right now the marriage is useful. Investors like the stable family man image. More messages scrolled across the screen. Explicit ones, planning ones, messages that showed clearly this wasn't a mistake or a brief affair, but a calculated, long-term deception. Henrik's wife had her hand over her mouth. Catherine Sterling looked like she might faint. The board members were staring at Marcus with expressions ranging from shock to disgust. But I wasn't done. My voice from the speakers. But the affair isn't why I'm showing you this. People have affairs. Marriages fail. That's personal. What's not personal is what else I found. The screen changed again, now showing documents, financial records, emails discussing offshore accounts and unreported transactions. What you're seeing are records I found on Marcus's personal computer, evidence of tax fraud. Money laundering, and here, the screen highlighted specific emails. Evidence of insider trading. Marcus has been using confidential information from merger discussions to make personal trades through shell corporations. The room erupted. People were shouting questions. Board members were on their phones. Lawyers were heading for the exits. Investors looked panicked. And Marcus just stood there, frozen, watching his entire life detonate in real time. My face filled the screens again, and my recorded voice spoke directly to him. You told me I'd regret leaving you. You were right. I do regret it. I regret not leaving sooner. I regret believing your lies. I regret wasting 2 years of my life on a man who saw me as nothing more than a useful prop. I paused, and even through the recording, the emotion was raw and real. But here's what I don't regret. I don't regret finding my strength. I don't regret learning to fight back. I don't regret exposing the truth about who you really are. The final image appeared on screen. Divorce papers, already filed, already public record as of 1 hour ago. I'm filing for divorce, and I've also sent all of this evidence to the Securities and Exchange Commission, the IRS, and the FBI, because you were right about something else, Marcus. People like me, people you think are nobody, we are nothing compared to your money and power. A small smile crossed my face on the screen. But the law doesn't care how rich you are, and the truth doesn't either. You're going to regret a lot of things, Marcus, but not the way you thought. The screens went black. For a moment, the entire ballroom was completely silent. 500 people holding their collective breath. Then all hell broke loose. Reporters who'd been covering the event rushed toward Marcus, shouting questions. Investors surrounded the Sterling Global board members, demanding answers. Henrik Anderson and the European delegation were being ushered out by their security team, clearly wanting nothing to do with this disaster. Catherine Sterling stood up, her face a mask of fury and humiliation, and walked out without a word to her son. And Vanessa, poor, stupid Vanessa, tried to approach Marcus, but he shoved her away so hard she stumbled. "This is your fault," he snarled at her. "You and your careless messages." So much for true love. Marcus finally turned to me. I was still sitting at the table, calm, sipping my champagne. "You destroyed me," he said, his voice shaking with rage. "You destroyed everything." I looked up at him and smiled, the same smile he'd given me when he told me I was nothing. "No, Marcus, I exposed you. You destroyed yourself. I'll sue you. I'll bury you in legal fees. I'll make sure you never." "You'll do nothing," I interrupted, "because I didn't do anything illegal. Every piece of evidence I showed came from your own files, obtained from property I have legal access to as your wife, and it's already been turned over to federal authorities. So unless you want to add witness intimidation to your growing list of legal problems, I suggest you focus on finding yourself a very good criminal defense attorney. Patricia Valdez appeared at my elbow as if summoned. Mrs. Sterling, I think it's time we left. I stood up, smoothing down my blue dress. I think you're right. As we walked through the chaotic ballroom, people stared. Some looked shocked. Some looked impressed. A few women even smiled at me, small conspiratorial smiles that said they understood, they'd been there, they were cheering for me. Outside the hotel, camera flashes exploded. The story had already leaked to the news crews waiting outside. Mrs. Sterling, is it true your husband was having an affair? Did you really turn over evidence to the FBI? Are you divorcing him? How long have you been planning this? Patricia guided me past them to a waiting car, but before I got in, I turned and faced the cameras. I have a brief statement, I said. The reporters surged forward. For 2 years, I let someone make me feel small, powerless, invisible. I believed that without his money, his name, his approval, I was nothing. I paused, making sure every camera caught this. I was wrong. And if anyone watching this is in a similar situation, if someone is making you feel trapped or worthless or dependent, I want you to know you're not. You're stronger than you think. And the people who try to cage you, they're only powerful if you believe they are. What's next for you? Someone shouted. I smiled, a real smile this time. Everything. The next few weeks were insane. The story went viral exactly like Sarah predicted. Within hours, hashtags were trending. Alina Sterling. Sterling exposed. Y'all regret this became a rallying cry for women everywhere who'd been underestimated or mistreated. The video from the gala was shared millions of times. News outlets analyzed every frame. People made memes. I became the face of a movement I hadn't intended to start, women fighting back against powerful men who thought they were untouchable. Marcus's life fell apart spectacularly. The European merger collapsed within 48 hours. Henrik Anderson released a statement saying his company couldn't partner with an organization that lacked fundamental integrity and ethical leadership. Sterling Global's stock plummeted. The board forced Marcus to resign as CEO. Multiple investors filed lawsuits, and the SEC investigation I'd triggered turned up even more illegal activity than I'd known about. Within a month, federal prosecutors brought charges: insider trading, tax evasion, wire fraud. Marcus was looking at serious prison time. His mother released a statement through her lawyers disowning him and removing him from the family trust. Apparently, public humiliation was where Catherine Sterling drew the line. And Vanessa? She was fired immediately and couldn't find another job in finance anywhere in the country. Turns out being known as the woman who helped bring down a major investment firm isn't great for your resume. The prenup Patricia challenged turned out to be voidable after all. Because Marcus had hidden assets when he'd made me sign it, and because he'd committed fraud during our marriage, the judge threw it out completely. I didn't get half of everything like in a normal divorce. A lot of Marcus's assets were seized by the government. But I got enough. Enough to never worry about money again. Enough to start over on my own terms. More importantly, I got myself back. I'm not going to lie and say everything was easy after that. There were hard days. Days when I questioned whether I'd done the right thing, whether the public spectacle had been necessary, whether I'd become as ruthless as Marcus in my pursuit of revenge. But then I'd get messages, hundreds of them, thousands, women telling me I'd inspired them to leave abusive relationships, to stand up to bullies, to value themselves, to fight back. One message came from a woman named Jennifer. She'd been married to a wealthy man who controlled everything, her money, her friends, her choices. She said watching what I'd done gave her the courage to leave. She was rebuilding her life, going back to school, discovering who she was outside of her husband's shadow. "You saved me," she wrote. "You showed me it was possible." That's when I knew. The regret Marcus predicted, it never came. What came instead was purpose. I started a foundation. An organization that helps women leave controlling or abusive relationships, providing them with legal resources, financial planning, job training, counseling. Everything I wished I'd had access to when I first wanted to leave Marcus. I used my story, my platform, to advocate for prenuptial agreement reform, to push for laws that protect vulnerable partners from being trapped by legal documents they don't fully understand, to shine a light on financial abuse, which is so often invisible but just as damaging as any other kind. Sarah became my business partner. Together, we built something meaningful, something that mattered. And 6 months after the gala, I ran into Trevor, Marcus's old business partner, at a coffee shop. He was one of the few people from that world who reached out after everything happened, who apologized for not speaking up when he saw what Marcus was doing. "How are you?" he asked, genuinely concerned. "I'm good," I said, and I meant it. "Really good. I'm glad. You deserved better than what Marcus gave you. Thank you for saying that." We talked for a while. He told me he'd left Sterling Global and started his own firm built on principles of transparency and ethics. I told him about the foundation. As we were saying goodbye, he paused. "Can I ask you something? That night at the gala, when everything went down, you seemed so calm. Like you weren't even surprised by the chaos. How did you do that?" I thought about his question. Because for the first time in 2 years, I wasn't pretending. I wasn't playing a role or hiding who I was. I was finally telling the truth. And the truth is the only thing that never feels heavy, even when the world is falling apart around you. He nodded slowly. "Marcus used to say you were too soft for his world, too naive." "I was," I agreed. "But I learned, the hard way." Well, for what it's worth, I think the world needs more people who care about things like truth and justice, even if they have to learn to fight for it. A year later, Marcus was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. I didn't attend the sentencing. I didn't need to. That chapter of my life was closed. I'd moved into a new apartment. Not a penthouse, just a comfortable 2-bedroom in a neighborhood with actual character. I decorated it myself, warm colors, comfortable furniture, books and plants and things that made me smile. It felt like home in a way the sterile penthouse never had. I was dating someone new. A teacher I'd met while volunteering at a literacy program. He didn't have money or power or connections, but he made me laugh. He asked about my day and actually listened to the answer. He valued my opinions. He saw me as a partner, not a possession. We took things slow. I was learning to trust again, but carefully this time, with my eyes open. My parents came to visit and stayed in my guest room. My mother kept crying happy tears, saying she had her daughter back. My father just hugged me and said he was proud of me. And late at night, when I couldn't sleep, I'd sometimes think about that moment in the penthouse bedroom, when Marcus smirked and said, "You'll regret this." He was right. I did regret things. I regretted not seeing the warning signs earlier. I regretted giving up my career and independence so easily. I regretted letting someone else define my worth. But I didn't regret leaving. I didn't regret exposing the truth. I didn't regret fighting back. And I absolutely didn't regret becoming someone Marcus Sterling never expected me to be, someone stronger than he'd ever given me credit for. The final message I want to leave you with is this: people will try to make you small. They'll tell you you're nothing without them. They'll use money, power, fear, or love to trap you in a box labeled powerless. But here's the truth they don't want you to know. You're never actually powerless. You're only powerless when you believe you are. The moment you decide to fight back, to stand up, to expose the truth, to walk away, that's the moment everything changes. It won't be easy. It will probably be messy and painful and scary. But on the other side of that fear is freedom. On the other side of that pain is yourself, waiting to be rediscovered. Marcus thought destroying me would be easy because he never actually saw me. He saw a role, a prop, a pretty face to stand next to him in photos. He never bothered to learn who I really was underneath all that. That was his biggest mistake. Because the woman he underestimated, she was paying attention. She was learning. She was planning. And when the moment came, she was ready. So yes, Marcus, you were right. I did regret it, just not the way you thought. I regret every moment I spent believing your lies. And I will never regret the moment I decided to tell the truth. To everyone watching this, thank you for being part of this journey with me. Thank you for the messages of support, for sharing your own stories, for reminding me that none of us are alone in our struggles. If my story helped even one person find the courage to leave a bad situation, to stand up for themselves, to remember their worth, then everything I went through meant something. And that's not regret. That's redemption. This is Alina Monroe, not Sterling, never again Sterling, signing off. Remember, you're stronger than you think. And the people who try to convince you otherwise, they're the ones who should be afraid. Because underestimated women are the most dangerous force in the world. We have nothing to lose and everything to prove. And we never, ever forget.